Howdy y'all, this is the Losman here, and it's Sunday night, so that means it's another installment of my Lazy Sunday Roundup. Now, at the time of this filming, it's late August, so as many of you are aware, I live in Texas, and Texas gets very hot. Very hot indeed. I'm talking about so hot, you don't want to be outside. It's just, ugh, it's wretched, it's horrifying, it's terrible, but it's where I live. Because in the wintertime, it's rather mild, so we don't have to worry about that too much. But let's see. This week, I volunteered to take part in a horror movie convention that's taking place in San Antonio. Actually, it's not a horror movie convention. It's a movie convention. It's going to be the Big Tex Comic Con, and it's going to be taking place in late September, and it's going to focus on comic books. It's going to have some WWE stars. It's going to have some actors from Sons of Anarchy and some people that appeared in The Walking Dead. So there's going to be quite a number of interesting people there. I know I'm certainly looking forward to meeting Ron Perlman, and I'm also going to look forward to meeting Jaleel White, I believe. Yeah, Jaleel White, who played Urkel. That's going to be fun. He's one of the more, unique guests that they're going to have there. But they also have some other interesting people there that's going to be worth meeting. Sid Haig will be there, and he's going to be dressed up in his Captain Spaulding attire. So that's going to be pretty cool. I'm definitely going to get a picture with him. I mean, because that's got to be done. Seriously, it's Sid Haig, and Sid Haig's been, in a whole bunch of movies that I've enjoyed, going all the way back to Galaxy of Terror, and of course, he was in movies before that. He was in Spider Baby, and he's been in a bunch of movies. So of course, people know who Sid Haig is. Well, as you can see, I've got a new Funko Pop character here for Georgie, the movie It. The reason why I got it was that one of the announced guests that they announced in the past day or so is a young actor by the name of Jackson Robert Scott. He's the actor who plays Georgie, and he's going to be coming to San Antonio. So I'm going to be looking forward to meeting him and getting him to autograph this Funko Pop character of his character. It's cute. It's got little boat SS Georgie. And of course he still has his arm. So yeah. Well, now he's also in the movie The Prodigy, which I saw earlier this year, I believe. If you're not familiar with the Prodigy, it's that movie, I believe it has Taylor Schilling in it, and it's kind of like it's an updated version of like the Bad Seed. So it's not a bad movie. I mean, got okay ratings, but I thought it was entertaining, albeit predictable. But let's talk about some other topics that are going on. I'm falling behind on my 300 movie watch challenge. Basically, work and second job are keeping me busy, so I'm getting kind of tired. I'm kind of tired when I come home. Plus, I'm doing my daily movie list. Doing a 100 day, 100 days to Halloween list. So that's keeping me quite active. But I'm still trying to watch as many movies as I can. I'm trying to squeeze a few in when I can. So I'm gonna hit 300. I know I will. I may have to cram a few movies in on the weekend, or at least when I can. Maybe I'll watch them while I'm doing my list. But ones I watched this week that worth noting, there was a movie that I watched called let's see, it was called Prospect. Now, Prospect is a science fiction movie that was released last year, I believe, and it concerns a father and daughter traveling down to a planet where they mine a unique like jewel from a organic source. Now, what happens is something happens along the way, and they learn that there are other prospectors working on this planet, so it's basically a competition for resources. And it's an interesting movie. It's more sci-fi. It's not really horror, but still, I thought it was a great movie. It's a low budget, but really well made. I mean, really good. It has Pedro Pascal in it, who is an amazing actor. If you're familiar with his work, Pedro Pascal is played the Red Viper in Game of Thrones, and he's also been in some other recent movies. And I believe he was also in the Kingsman 2, the one with the Statesman, and a few other movies. I mean, he's a great actor, so it's worth checking out. Now, another movie I checked out was Searching. Now, Searching is a relevant movie, especially given the internet, the popularity of the internet. It concerns John Cho, who of course from Harold and Kumar. He plays a father whose daughter disappears, and he then turns to social media to try to find out clues to what happened to her. Now, Searching is kind of a relevant movie because it does highlight the dangers of social media, especially for teenagers. So because here he is. I mean, his character is basically a smart man, with a good job, but he soon learns that he doesn't know much about his daughter. So I mean, it's a terrifying movie. It's a thriller. It's not really horror. It's more thriller than anything else, but it does tie in well with other similar movies like The Den or the Unfriended movies. And those rely more on supernatural elements, but it does go into the notion of the fears of technology, especially the internet, because it can be scary out there, especially for young women. It's a dangerous place. It's always wise to be very careful about your personal identity online. So you don't want to worry about that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, Searching is a really good movie. Another movie I checked out was called The Initiation. That was an old movie that I basically remembered when I was younger, and I never got a chance to watch it. But it's your typical, teen slasher from the early '80s. It has Daphne Zuniga in it, which is nice because I met her last year. I love Daphne Zuniga. She was she played Princess Vespa in Spaceballs, and she was on Melrose Place. But more importantly, she's been in a couple of horror movies, especially because she's a beautiful young actress. So, The Initiation, it's a typical slasher. It's a basically a group of teens, a bunch of girls that are trying to pledge a sorority. They break into a mall. Really wonder what that sounds like. And they encounter, crazy person, killing and stabbing them. In many respects, this movie actually probably deserved the title Chopping Mall more than the movie Chopping Mall did. I mean, because this one actually has chopping in it, and they're in a mall. But yeah, okay, we won't worry about that. That's neither here nor there. But the other thing I was going to mention or talk about tonight, one of my lists that I've been doing, as I mentioned before, I'm doing a series of 100 lists for the 100 Days to Halloween, which I started about 4 weeks ago. I am up to 33 lists right now, and as of me filming this video, it's going to be 66 days to Halloween, so we're almost 2 months away from Halloween. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a list that I'm going to be posting tonight, and it's going to be an interesting list. Many of the lists I'm doing are going to be fun, simple little lists, which I'm going to incorporate into my website. Now, of course, these are going on my blog first, but they will be featured onto my website so that I can always reference them and, show them off to people because, people like lists, or at least they like my lists. All right, so for tonight's topic, it's going to be a discussion of fake sequels to popular movies. Now, before I start this list, I'm going to go ahead and make reference to a movie that's on this list because there's a special significance to this movie, especially today. Today being August 25th, 2019. It is the 40th anniversary of the release of Zombi, Lucio Fulci's classic vomit maker. Now, this movie, it's a classic movie, goes all the way back, like I said, to 1979. Directed by Italian director Lucio Fulci. It is a gross movie. It is a vomit-inducing movie. It is a gory movie. It was one of the first of the Italian barf makers, or vomit makers as I like to call them. And it's going to be... today it's celebrating its 40th anniversary of release in Italy. It did come into the United States a few months later. But if you haven't seen Zombie, you really should watch it. I mean, you've probably seen clips from it. I mean, there's some infamous moments in this movie, especially one involving an eyeball and a zombie being attacked by a shark. So this is it's a classic movie. It's disgusting. It's gory. It's creepy. It's weird. It's Lucio Fulci. Hey, you got to check this out. If you want to be a true fan of horror movies, then you have to watch this. It's wonderful. It's amazing. It's gross. It's disgusting. It's a classic. I mean, hell, 40 years this movie was released, so basically I'm going to put this down for a second. So with that in mind, in reference to Zombie, I'm going to go ahead and go down to my list of fake sequels to popular movies. First movie, Zombie. Now, you might be asking yourself, why is Zombie on this list? Well, here's the funny story about Zombie. When it was produced, the movie was made and produced as a cash-in for another successful horror movie. That would be Dawn of the Dead. Now, when Dawn of the Dead was released in Italy, it was called Zombie, and it was a very popular movie, as are many other American movies in Italy. I mean, they get to be very popular. And Zombie being, popular title, I mean, hell, Dawn of the Dead is one of the greatest horror movies ever made. Definitely one of the best movies of the 70s. And, it's George Romero, and it was, it's still to this day, it's a great movie. It's amazing. It's wonderful. Well, Lucio Fucci decided to cash in on the success of that movie by making Zombie 2. Now, Zombie 2 was, also known as Zombie 2. The Zombie 2 was a reference to it being a unofficial sequel to Zombie, which is, Dawn of the Dead here. The movie concerns a group of people who encounter, zombies on a Caribbean island. And as I mentioned earlier, the movie is very gross, very disgusting. It's, yeah, Italian zombie movies of that era were notorious for being very gross and just wow. I mean, they literally are memorable films, along with the cannibal movies that were released at about the same time. I mean, Italy was known for putting out a lot of unique styles of movies in the day. You had the giallos, you had the cannibal movies, you had the zombie movies, and of course you had all the movies by Dario Argento. So you basically have quite a collection of classic horror movies coming out. Many of them were modeled or more or less rip-offs of American movies, but some of them were unique movies in their own right, and I definitely have I featured a few of them on this video, or I will feature some in future videos. Now, next movie on the list is called Alien 2 on Earth, and it was released in 1980. Now, you might be asking, Alien 2? I know Alien 2. It was released as Aliens in 1986, and yeah, Aliens is one of the greatest movies ever made. Definitely one of the best action movies, and albeit not a horror movie, it definitely fits well into that unique genre of horror action films like Predator or Terminator, and that I mean, those are exciting movies. And the 80s was an amazing time. I grew up in the 80s, so of course, watching Aliens was just wow, amazing. Now, when Alien came out in 1979, it was it became a huge hit. I mean, it was I mean, to this day, it's still it is one of two of my favorite horror movies of all time. That and The Thing, and Alien definitely has remained one of the most popular scary movies ever made, especially in that era. Well, when Alien was released, of course, you had a whole collection of Alien knockoffs or rip-off movies that were made that capitalized on the success of that movie. I even have a list on my blog of, or actually on my letterbox of notable movies that were rip-offs of Aliens, which if you want to check out, it's on my blog and it's also on my letterbox. Now, I'm going to talk about this one movie called Alien 2 on Earth. It was directed by Ciro Ippolito, I believe, and the movie was basically a direct cash-in on the success of Alien. It has nothing to do with the original movie by Ridley Scott. It is a knockoff movie. It is a very bad movie. The plot concerns a group of astronauts who return to Earth, and I guess they bring back this strange, blue rock, which somehow finds its way on Earth and does some, basically it's like an egg of some sort or something, and it unleashes a creature in a cave system. So basically, you have a group of cave explorers going down into the caves, and they encounter gross, disgusting, icky monsters. It's very gory. It's very bloody. I do believe it may have been on the video nasty list. I know Zombie was on the video nasty list. Might be something to look into. But yeah, this movie was it's awful. It's bad. It's terrible. It ripped off one of the most famous movies of all time. As a result, 20th Century Fox made sure that this movie never got a release in the United States. Now, it has been released on Blu-ray and on DVD, so you can watch the movie, and you can watch it on YouTube. I mean, it's not a good movie. It's terrible. I mean, literally, it's just, I mean, it's a cash-in, I mean, it's not even a good one. I mean, Zombie was basically a cash in on a famous movie, but at least that one's entertaining. It's a classic. It's a ripoff, but it's classic. All right, so the next movie on the list is going to be a movie from 1989. It's a movie that was called Shocking Dark, but it was also billed as Terminator 2. Now, James Cameron's Terminator was released in the 1980s, I believe 84, I believe it was, and, became a surprise hit. And it was followed by Aliens, which is kind of unique that I bring that up because this movie well, we'll call it Terminator 2, released in 1989. And the funny thing about this movie is it can't quite make up its mind whether it's a ripoff of Terminator or Aliens, because the plot is basically Aliens. You have a group of armed soldiers going in to deal with a problem, and basically the movie essentially just, it's like they took the script for Aliens and says, you know what, screw it, who cares, we're just gonna make this movie and capitalize on the success of Terminator by introducing a Terminator like creature at the end, who fights the survivors, which is how the movie ties into the movie Terminator. Now, it's also interesting to note that this movie was also called Aliens 2, which is kind of ironic because Aliens is itself a sequel. So, yeah, that movie, yeah. I mean, you could probably find it out there on YouTube. Was not released in this country because, reasons, legal reasons. Reasons like James Cameron could have sued the shit out of him for ripping off not one or two of his, but two of his movies. So, yeah, that one is Terminator 2, but also released as Shocking Dark, which, maybe I should have used that one when it was released. Now, the next film is a fun one. It's called Jaws 5, Cruel Jaws. Now, I remember the release of all the Jaws movies when I was growing up. First Jaws movie came out in 1975, and I believe we watched it in the drive-in theater. Definitely very memorable. I mean, almost as memorable as was when I first watched Star Wars in '77. But yeah, I mean, Jaws was memorable. That's still one of the greatest movies ever. It was the first summer blockbuster. I recently rewatched it around July 4th, so hey, it's a classic movie. The sequel, Jaws 2, came out in, I believe, it was 1979 or 1980, or was it 78? And, I think it was 78. And that one didn't quite capture the same energy or spirit of the first Jaws movie, but it's still a fun movie. I mean, it's definitely worth checking out. I mean, if of all the Jaws movies, it's the best of the sequels, and it's not a bad movie in its own right. I mean, it's got a good cast, and it was entertaining. Jaws 3, I remember when that came out. It was in 3D, so of course me and my brother went to go see it in the theater because we wanted to watch 3D. Ooh, novelty 3D. The glasses were funny. They were these blue glasses that had a little Jaws head on the nose bridge, which is kind of fun. Yeah, the movie was not so great. It does have a good cast though. It's got Louis Gossett Jr. in it, and Bess Armstrong and Dennis Quaid, I believe, is in. Oh, and Leah Thompson's in there. So no, it's got a good cast. It's kind of a silly movie. It takes place in a SeaWorld like park, and the 3D elements are kind of in there just as a hokey gimmick to get you into the theater. Now the Jaws 4, which would come out a few years later, is the only one I didn't watch in the theater because when I watched the preview to it, can't really remember what horror movie I was watching. I remember the preview, Jaws 4, and then it finished with, "This time, it's personal." The whole crowd in the theater laughed in a mocking way because how absurd is that premise? I mean, that tagline. And yes, Jaws 4 is an awful movie. It's a bad movie. It's an MST3K worthy movie. Now, you can watch the movie. It's watchable. And, it is what it is. It's a bad movie. But, sometimes bad movies can be fun. So, yeah, I've seen most of it. I haven't watched it from beginning to end because it's just, I mean, I watched the fun parts, which are basically the toward the end, the beginning and the end, it's Jaws 4. But that being said, this movie that was released in 1995 by director Bruno Mattei, who, he also directed Shocking Dark. Ooh, Bruno Mattei. Very familiar to fans of Italian horror. He directed this movie called, Jaws 5, and Jaws 5 basically has a shark attacking people, off the coast of Florida, and that's about it. The plot's basically the same as Jaws. You have an attraction, touristy area, afraid of losing business, and you've got the people going out to try to hunt it. And what can be said about Jaws 5? Other than it's a ripoff. It's a bad ripoff. I mean, the shark prop that they use is horrible. It's even worse than Bruce from the original Jaws movie, and that one was not that great. When you watch the movie, it has a mix of archive footage from like stock footage from shark documentaries, as well as some scenes from the Jaws movies and some other Italian shark movies. With that in mind, the movie has never been released in the United States because, hi, copyright infringement. I mean, that's the one thing about some of the most of these movies I'm describing is none of them, or almost all of them, didn't get theatrical U.S. releases except for Zombie. But yeah, because when you rip off a movie, it's kind of hard to get a release, especially when you have studios like, especially Paramount. Yeah, they're not too keen on you stealing their intellectual property, especially on something like Jaws. I mean, seriously, you think you're going to get away with releasing that in this country? So yeah, that's that movie. Now, the last movie I'm going to talk about is this is an interesting one. This is one that I didn't even know existed. This is a Paranormal Activity 2 Tokyo Night. Now, time out. You might be asking, wait a minute. I remember Paranormal Activity 2. Yes, Oren Peli's classic movie Paranormal Activity, which I believe came out in 2007, is one of the most famous found footage movies of all time. I mean, it really is. It's also one of the most successful movies ever made. I mean, literally, they made it for like $15,000, and it made a shitload of money. I mean, more percentage-wise, more money than even the Blair Witch Project. And now, of course, when you have a movie that's successful, makes you wonder, why didn't they throw out an immediate sequel? Well, it took 3 years to get a sequel to Paranormal Activity. So in that time, a Japanese studio was able to throw out a little knockoff, capitalizing on the name Paranormal Activity and setting it in Tokyo, Japan. The premise is generally the same as Paranormal Activity. I mean, it's really not worth discussing because, I mean, it's a ripoff movie, and it's probably one of the better ones on this list because, the Paranormal Activities are pretty. Essentially, it's a simple movie to begin with. I mean, you're just using cameras and you're staging various events to suggest, ghostly activity. So, Paranormal Activity 2 Tokyo Night released the same year as the sequel, or the genuine sequel, Paranormal Activity 2. And that concludes that list of famous knockoff movies, or knockoff movies to famous movies, and that's going to be on a list that I'm going to put out tonight, along with my other lists that are out there. So let's see, we are at a point where I can basically close out. Once again, we have some conventions coming up pretty soon. I'm going to be attending the Big Tex Comic Con next month, and then of course we have the Cult Classic Convention coming up in February. And of course, the long-term one is going to be the Texas Frightmare next year in May, and they've already announced some pretty good guests, so I'm looking forward to that. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and close this out, and I'm going to wish you all a good evening, and later.